Hey everyone, this is Dean on the scene, Dean Rogers for the Rogers Revue, and welcome to the interview. We are interviewing the people who make the entertainment world go round. And today we have a filmmaker who is hot right now. I mean, he's hotter than the sun, I can tell you. Now, you have to remember his name because his studio, he is responsible for the award-winning horror film, The Killer of Grassy Ridge. He's responsible for Red Eagle 1. He's responsible for the FarragutForward project that has just dropped a few days ago. And he's responsible for a Batman fan film. Who knew? The film is called The Oath. He is, I can't say a triple threat, but I think it's a quadruple threat at this point. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the wonderful Johnny K joining us on the interview. Johnny K, welcome to the interview.
Thank you, man. That was quite an intro. Now I got to live up to that introduction.
Yes, you do. I mean, you have gotten 4 films in the pipeline within the last couple of years. I can't think of any director locally, nationally, or internationally that's done so many films in so little time. So you got major props to, you know?
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you having me.
Anytime. So the first question I want to ask you is, when did you realize you wanted to become a filmmaker? Walk us through that genesis.
You know, with me, just a little bit of background. I did a little bit of on-camera work years ago, and I worked on some shows that were filming here in Virginia, where I live. Mm-hmm. The spinoff of The Walking Dead was filming down near Richmond. The World Beyond was the spinoff, and they brought me on, and I was in the pilot for that. And there's a lot of downtime, you know, when you're working those sets. As you know, you go from pulling your hair out crazy, running around because they need you right then, to, you know, hours of just kind of sitting and talking and meeting new folks. And I met some folks on that set. And from there, they referred me over to an Ethan Hawke show that was filming on the other side of Richmond, Virginia, called The Good Lord Bird, which was on Showtime. And if you've not seen it, definitely check out The Good Lord Bird. I think it's probably Ethan Hawke's probably the greatest performance of his career, in my opinion. He plays John Brown, you know, the abolitionist John Brown, and it kind of details the events leading up to Harper's Ferry. So check out Good Lord Bird. But I ended up working on that show for weeks and weeks. And I kind of just went into learning mode. And, you know, in those downtimes, I would just kind of keep eyes and ears open and look around and see how they were running that set and what decisions were being made. And that's the top, you know, that's kind of the highest level. I mean, that's a Showtime, you know, Hollywood production. And I'm just watching the masters at their craft do this. Kevin Hooks was the director of one of the episodes we did. And, you know, of course he did, I think he just directed an episode of Punisher on Netflix. He also did Passenger 57, I think, back in the day with Wesley Snipes. So he directed one episode. I just got to watch Kevin work for days. And that really is what inspired me, because I thought, you know, I don't have a Hollywood budget. I don't have Hollywood equipment. But I have some ideas, and I've seen some workarounds, and I've seen some ways that, you know, you might be able to cheat some stuff. And when I was talking to a couple of the other guys on that show, you know, they mentioned something called the 48-Hour Film Festival. And I was not a filmmaker at that time, so that was new to me. I had no idea what the 48s are. And for those who don't know, I mean, it's a insane film competition where you get your assignment, you know, Friday night, and then you have 48 hours to turn in a complete film, a short film, and you have to turn it in by Sunday night. And they give you your genre, and they give you all these things. And the idea of the 48s just struck me as like an awesome challenge, because I'm a notorious procrastinator. I will put everything off for as long as I can. And when you're kind of under pressure, like you would be in the 48-hour film festival, I thought, wow, that's a great impetus to get your stuff done, because at the end of 48 hours, you're either going to have a movie or you're not, you know? And so that kind of got me thinking, and I left the set, came back home, and still had that thought in my mind. And I thought, you know, I wonder if I can make a short film. I'm not going to try 48 hours, but I wonder if I can give myself 60 days to write it, cast it, shoot it, edit it, stick some music on it, do some sound design, and get it done. And at the end of that 60-day period, I'll either have a movie or I won't. And, you know, at that point I can, you know, stop making excuses, because at least I tried. Yeah. And I got to the end of that 60-day period, and what I had was a little short film, 9 minutes, called The Killer of Grassy Ridge. And I was super proud of it. I loved it. And I was really happy with it. And so happy that I said, well, maybe when we throw it into a film festival or two,
Mm-hmm.
and let's see what happens, And next thing you know, what I did not expect is this thing went around the world. I think we got into over 50 festivals worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
We hit every continent. I was doing an interview the other day. I mentioned it. We hit every continent except Antarctica, and I'm still looking for the Antarctica Film Festival because I figure there might be a outpost of Norwegian scientists down there looking for something to do. But we know how that story ends. But yeah, the thing ended up going around the world, and we got some pretty major awards. We got Best U.S. Short Film, Best Horror, Best Thriller. Picked up a few awards for Best Debut. So that really humbled me. And to your question, what kind of got me into that? It was my first film that really inspired me to keep going because I'm like, wow, now I kind of, I've picked up some tricks. I've learned a few things. I've learned certainly, a few things I don't want to do anymore. And I'm like, why am I not cranking one or two of these out a year if I can keep, a quality that I'm happy with? So that just kind of launched me. And you know how it goes. Like once the brain gets going and the wheels start spinning, it's hard to stop it sometimes. So that's what kind of launched it for me.
You're right about that. And you just actually changed the game with my next question. Thank you very much. So with that in mind, my next question would be, after you made your first film, The Killer of Grassy Ridge, and you produced it in 62 days, won all of these awards. And this was your first time directing a film, producing, getting cast and everything. What were some of the lessons learned that you took from your first filmmaking experience and you applied it to the next films you're about to make?
Good question. And I didn't already answer that because that's a good question. I can go different direction with that. I think something I learned from Grassy Ridge is to be prepared. When you have other people who are depending on you to know what you're doing, like you can't waste those people's time. You need to come in the door with a plan, probably plan B, probably plan C, and then maybe plan D just in case it snows. But you need to at least come in with a plan. Don't wing it. I didn't do those things on Grassy Ridge. I did come in the door prepared. But that kind of reinforced to me, wow, we did need to change a few things here and there. And if I had not had kind of a few backup plans and really, did a lot of the pre-production work to get prepared for that, it might have failed. There might have been some bad days there. So we went into Red Eagle 1, which was the second film that we shot, which was a very, very different film, not a horror film. And it's also not been released yet. It's still in the editing room right now. We put a trailer out, but Red Eagle 1 is still in post right now because I won't get into it, but there's a few things I want to do to it to kind of spice it up. And there's actually been enough time that's passed now since we shot it. And I want to kind of maybe take advantage of how some of our characters have aged since we shot that film. And I won't go too much more into it than that, but Red Eagle 1 was a little different because we shot it right in the middle of the pandemic.
Yes.
And right when the pandemic, we probably shot it in June, July through October of 2020. So we were month 3 or 4 into the pandemic. And that was a very different challenge because I wanted to make sure everybody was safe. We specifically wrote that story to be filmed with a skeleton crew, no more than 2 actors on scene together at any time. So we kind of wrote that to be a pandemic movie, even though the topic has nothing to do with the pandemic. But that was just kind of a different challenge for me, was how do we go from Killer Grassy Ridge, which was shot, out in the woods, to, working with different locations. My first time working with child actors, this is the first time I'd ever had to work with them. So I tried not to put them through 12-hour days because I didn't want to go to jail. But just working that was a completely different project. But what I will say about Grassy Ridge, I did learn, don't film 100% exteriors in the middle of November and December.
And why is that?
Have a heart, Your cast and crew will thank you if there's a nice warm place to go to. Don't keep them out in the cold and in the middle of December.
I definitely have to agree with you right there because my first filmmaking experience as a still photographer, it was in March of 2007, and it was a very cold day, exterior shot. I thought I was going to freeze to death by that day, but thankfully I didn't. Thankfully I did not.
You made it through.
Mhm. Now you led this on to a great segue because I can personally relate to Red Eagle One. For my dream growing up was to become an astronaut, and this is about a young boy who won't give up on his dream to reach Mars. And I'd like to know from you with this. And I saw the trailer; it's beautiful, it's breathtaking. I really want to see it. What can us dreamers look forward to this tale, especially since we haven't had the space shuttle in over a decade, and we are talking about going to Mars. And thanks to For All Mankind, this is film. It's a space exploration series on Apple TV Plus, but the story really resonated with me. I want to know how it will resonate to the other dreamers who always wanted to go up in space.
Well, that's an awesome question. My hope is that it will reinforce that you can't continuously be put down by what the world dishes out at you, and that's why I wanted to tell this story through the eyes of a little kid. I'm a huge proponent of the space program, especially crewed space. I'm a huge proponent of getting to Mars as soon as possible. To quote Buzz Aldrin, get your ass to Mars. Like, that's his tagline. We got, and I think he's quoting something else, obviously, but I think when we reach Mars, and Dean, I do think it'll happen in our lifetimes. I mean, we are the lucky generation that's going to get to witness it. And I think when, humanity reaches Mars, it'll be the single biggest accomplishment that we've ever achieved as a species. I mean, to take that level of engineering and brain power and, put it together to go on that tremendous voyage, because we are a species of explorers. That's what we are. We don't always remember that when we're at each other's throats and finding new and inventive ways to hurt each other. But I mean, we are a species of explorers. That is our history. And I think when we reach Mars, it will be the single biggest accomplishment we've ever accomplished, ever achieved. And that's kind of where I come from personally on it. And then when you turn on the news, you see, why are we thinking about going to Mars? There's still, world hunger here. There's problems here we haven't solved. There's this, that, the other. I mean, there's so many reasons that if you allow yourself to get bombarded by them, you'll just get down and out. Like, why even try? Why do anything? And, it's harder. The reason I wrote Red Eagle One is because I think it's harder to tell a little kid that his or her dream is stupid. It's easy to say that to an adult. It's less easy to say that to an 8-year-old. So kind of the point of Red Eagle One, I wanted to kind of highlight a lot of the negativity that's out there, not just in terms of space. I think it's a little more symbolic than that, but I wanted to kind of put the lens on an 8-year-old kid, and I want him to be surrounded by these adults who are saying, you need to get real. You need to get realistic. It's not going to be you that goes to Mars. Why would you ever want to do that? And I want this kid to hear this so many times that he gets so frustrated that he just doubles down. And I'm telling you, Dean, like the first batch of humans who land on Mars, they're alive right now. And they're probably kids right now. So, next time you're at church or, in Walmart or wherever, look around and see a little kid. And I mean, why would it not be that kid? We don't know who the first folks, who are going to land on Mars are, but I can tell you they're probably kids right now, or maybe teenagers. And I just really wanted to tell that story because it's a hopeful story, and it's what I hope to be an inspirational story. And the trailer is out. You can, search Red Eagle One. It's on YouTube and find the trailer. And I'm really looking forward to getting that movie out. It's been delayed in post, and now we got a couple other projects that jumped in front of it, but it's never been far from my heart. And it's something I'm really, really passionate about. I'm really actually looking forward to getting that movie done and out there.
I can definitely hear the passion in your voice and feel it, especially this goes to the story of a celebrity I interviewed, actually Simon Pegg, when he told a story because it was about the Golden Mile movie. Oh my gosh, I forgot the name, The World's End. And he talked about a childhood dream that he hoped to have fulfilled but never did. And when the teacher saw him draw a picture of an astronaut, and the teacher said, "You'll never be an astronaut." And he went back to the teacher. I said, "I may have been an astronaut, but I'm the motherfucking engineer of the Starship Enterprise." I said, there you go. But yeah, I definitely feel the passion. And you're right. That future astronaut is here somewhere. We don't know where, but when it does happen in our lifetime, it will be epic, to say the least.
If I was a betting man, I think we're going to hit Mars in the 2040s. If I'm a betting man, there's some who would say we'll get there sooner than that, but I want to be a little more realistic, and I think we're Mars bound in the 2040s. And like I said, we're the lucky generation who gets to witness it. And I think not enough people think about that, and It's something a lot of people take for granted. But I personally can't wait.
I cannot wait either. Yeah, especially that's a goal right there. Especially 8 months to 8 months back. Whoever do it, we'll definitely have the right stuff in our eyes,
Yep.
So we went from 2 short films, and we're about to go into 2 feature-length films. And the first one I want to talk about, since today is the last day of fundraising for The Oath, the Batman fan film. And from what I've seen in the pictures on social media, it's like, oh my gosh, this is 1989's Batman all over again. I'm really looking forward to it. How were you able to recapture the look and the feel of this iconic character? And this seems like a love letter to you, because you yourself mentioned that you are a lifelong Batman fan. So to take that fandom and put a story to it, it's a dream come true,
It is a dream come true. I mean, especially Batman 89, Tim Burton's 1989 movie. That's my personal sweet spot. And I was the prime audience for that. You and I are probably about the same age, but I mean, I was the target audience for that when it came out in 1989. I was a 9-year-old kid. The only Batman I knew outside of the comic books and my superpowers action figure was Adam West, just like the rest of us. And, you get to a point where Adam West, as campy and lovable and awesome as that show was, you get to wanting something a little more. And when that movie came out, I mean, you remember it was the single biggest pop culture event of all time. Number one.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It was just Batmania, that summer of 89. The folks who lived it will never forget that, because it just left an imprint on all of us. So yeah, that was me. And that was my childhood with Batman. And I can still remember to this day, maybe it was my first attempt at being a cinematographer. I would get my little Batman action figures, and the first thing I would do is just turn off all the lights in my bedroom, just black it out, right? Because I don't need any fluorescent lights or any, no bedroom ceiling lights on my Batman figure. So I just turned all the lights off, and now I'm cinematically lighting my toys with like flashlights, directly overhead, get some cool shadows under the eyes, and as a 9 or 10-year-old, I was already into that stuff. And like fast forward, when we started shooting The Oath, I mean, I was that little kid all over again. Now I had a 6-foot Batman instead of a 4-inch Batman, and I still had the light over his eyes to give me some shadows. But what I will say, The Oath, thankfully, it is also a short film. It's not a feature.
Okay.
And I'm very thankful for that, because I would be bankrupt and probably insane if it was a feature. So we're tracking probably 15 to 20 minutes on it. It will be a short. We've raised about $8,000, which is awesome, because it helps offset, all our production costs. And, certainly I'm not making a profit off of Batman because I don't want to go to jail, but it's offsetting all of our production costs, hotels for cast and crew, because we all traveled down to Petersburg, Virginia to film that. And your question about the production design, how do we recapture that?
Yes.
I knew early on, we did not have the budget to recreate the Anton Furst, production design on Batman 89. Legendary.
Yep.
Most people think of that production design and they think of Tim Burton, but, you got to give a huge plug to Anton Furst, who just had this vision of what Gotham should look like. I think the line in the original script said, something like skyscrapers, bursting through the sidewalks from hell, and they just keep going through the sidewalk. And, it's just such a cool visual, and all the industrial look. I knew going in, we weren't going to have that. And I was not going to try to cheat it with matte paintings and green screen. And I'm just not into that. So the story of The Oath is much more of a street level story. We're kind of in the gritty back alleys of Gotham, kind of the darkest of the dark areas of Gotham. And I really wanted to tell a street level story about what else was going on in that world. And our film is set 1 week before the events of Batman 89. So lots of Easter eggs and references in there for fans of the 89 film. And we had about 9 months of pre-production last year. We finally shot the bulk of the film in November and December of 2021.
Mhm.
I've still got some visual effects shots that we're actually shooting a few this week, actually. And then the piece gets edited together. And I'm so excited about the music. It's not obviously, we can't use the Danny Elfman score from
Or we
'89.
can't use Prince, unfortunately, either.
No, we can't. Well, trust me, this is not Prince would not be appropriate for this story. As much as I love
Right.
1989, it would be a little weird for this short.
Mhm.
Uh, but the composer we got on board is a guy named Francesco D'Andrea. He's an Italian
Mm.
composer, and the music by Francesco is perfect for our film. So I can't wait to get that out there because there's to me it reeks of Batman '89ness, and I love it so much. So.
Absolutely. And do we have a timeline of when the Oath will come out to social media anytime soon?
We're looking at March or April 2022. So,
All right. And
so
this will interview would definitely be out before that. Nice.
good. Good,
So
good.
you're going from one franchise to Starship Farragut with the Farragut Forward project, which this is an epic film when it comes to fan films because unlike any of the films we had in the past, this one is dedicated to the Twok era, the Rafcon era for those who don't know, and we got the uniforms. And you've done something that very few fan films have done. You really paid homage by using models. And I'd like to know why did you make that decision to use models instead of CGI, which is easy to create these ships, but you decided to go the old-fashioned way, which was done back in the 70s and the 60s and the 80s and somewhat in the 90s.
Yeah, the answer is because I'm insane and I'm full of really bad ideas. I
But
also
this is a good idea. Good idea.
I also threatened to shoot it on actual film instead
Oh,
of digital.
wow.
But I got vetoed on that one. I'm glad I did. That was kind of a joke, but maybe I
Mhm.
was serious a little bit. Yeah. So the Farragut Forward project, John Broughton, who you know, executive producer of Farragut Films. John and I have known each other probably go back to 2013 or something like that.
Mhm.
John was here for the premiere party of Killer of Grassy Ridge, so he liked that film. We got to talking about it. His son Xavier is actually our child star in Red Eagle 1.
Yes.
So Xavier was here a lot for that as we were filming. Obviously, John was too. And at some point in that process, last summer, John mentioned he'd been away from the Star Trek fan film world for a while because of some of the stuff that happened, which was way before my time, and I'm not very much tuned into it. I read certain articles on the internet that are out there, so I have an idea of what happened. But I knew John
Mhm.
kind of stepped away from Star Trek for a bunch of years, and last summer he snuck a script in on me. I was going full speed ahead, editing Red Eagle 1 and in pre-production for The Oath, the
Mhm.
Batman film, and John slips a script over to me, and it was only a 2-page script, and he pitched it as a prologue for Farragut Forward. So kind of a teaser. That's just the first couple of minutes of a brand new story and a brand new adventure, because John has been doing the Star Trek fan film thing for 15 plus years,
Yep.
and he really wanted to kind of segue that over from the 1960s Star Trek, which I was never a huge fan of. I love the movie era. I love Wrath of Khan, love Undiscovered Country. Like those are kind of my Star Trek original series things. And John hooked me. He said, "This is going to be the monster maroon uniforms. It's going to
Mm.
be kind of the Wrath of Khan era, the movie era, which I love." And he got
Yes.
my attention. And I read this 2-page script. And as soon as I read it, I thought, I know exactly, I hadn't fully committed, but I knew exactly if I did it, I knew exactly how I would do this. I said, I'm turning the lights off. I'm filling that room up with smoke. We're going to get some Klingons in there. I mean, we're going to
Mhm.
kind of make this a dark and moody, atmospheric thing, which is as far from kind of campy 1960s Star Trek as you can go, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And he hooked me with that little 2-minute script. I committed to it because it was a 2-minute script. I knew we could shoot it in a weekend and
Mhm.
edit it, and get it out there quick. So I did kind of put pause on The Oath to shoot Farragut Forward, and now it's kind of taken on a life of its own.
Mhm.
And I think, as you mentioned, it is just the first 2 or 3 minutes to a much bigger story that we are now looking toward filming later this year. So I might have bitten off a pretty big chunk. He knew what he was doing, giving me a 2-page script, knowing that later this year I'll be filming a much bigger and more ambitious piece, I think. So.
Absolutely. So what can fans of Star Trek, especially the fan films, can look forward to Farragut Forward as far as the crew, the cast, the sets? What can you tell us, tease us a bit about this upcoming project?
Well, the first thing I would say, I won't spoil it for anyone who's not seen it, but definitely check out the prologue, which we released on YouTube last week.
Yep.
That'll give you a real good idea of which characters are coming back, especially an iconic one from the past that not a lot of folks expected to see. So I won't spoil it, but I'll say the prologue definitely kind of sets the stage for who's coming back. I won't go into too much detail about the cast. I will tell you that there's obviously been a lot of discussions about bringing back as many of the original Farragut Films folks as possible. I've been privy to some of that, and obviously I have a draft of the script over here. So, I see which characters we're looking at. Otherwise, sets, the John did mention on another interview we did the other day, so I know that it's kind of out there. There will be a crowdfunding campaign for our full episode. The prologue, we self-financed. We made the decision just to self-finance, which was mostly John, and definitely made the decision to go ahead and crowdfund the larger piece because it is an ambitious piece of film. Dean, it's ambitious. The script is ambitious and it's awesome. And if we pull it off, I think it's probably going to be one of the best Star Trek fan films ever made. But the story is great. The visuals in my head right now, I think are going to relate to screen really well. And to your point a second ago that I've not talked about, the practical models. It was one of the first things I mentioned to John during a production meeting last year for the prologue. He said, it'll end with kind of, coming out on this, a view of this ship. And it just clicked in my head. I said, John, if we're really going to the 80s movie era of Star Trek, what do you say we give CGI a break and maybe let's film some practical Starship model kits, kind of like it's the old days. Maybe it's an homage to, 80s Star Trek, the movie era. It's an homage to the early days of ILM, Industrial Light and Magic. Those guys were the masters at that. And John's eyes just lit up. And we were both just kind of big children at that point because we didn't really know what all was involved in that. I had an idea, but like anything else, the execution is always 10 times harder than you think it will be. But yeah, we made the decision to go ahead and use practical models. I will say moving into the full episode that we'll be shooting later this year, I'm sure it's definitely going to be a hybrid. We're not going to use exclusively practical models. I would love to find a kind of a happy medium between the CGI world and the practical world and see if we can kind of blend that footage together, just because I learned a lot shooting that bird of prey in the prologue. It was only on screen for 4 seconds. It was by far the hardest shot of that movie to film, by far. It took weeks to do.
Weeks, really? So let me ask this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was a bit of a perfectionist with it. I wanted it to, there's just so many things that I wanted to, film it right and get the shadows right. And all of that was before we moved it into post, because in post, you got to do all the motion tracking and masking. And I learned that I'm not ever going to be a visual effects artist. I learned that about myself. So.
I hear. But I'm so glad that you were able to capture the model on screen, because it looks like you're right. It felt like you were back in 1982, the early 80s, where model ships were the supreme to get those excellent visual effects shots of those movies that we both grew up in.
I hope it translated. I've been getting a lot of texts and feedback about that bird of prey, and a lot of them, they recognize it right away. People are texting me, they're like, "Is that real? That looks like a real model." Because people can know. I mean, we live in a golden age of CGI. You can't have movies like Spider-Man and, Iron Man and Avengers. You can't make those movies without CGI. So the CGI that's out there is excellent, and it's an awesome tool for a storyteller. But I like to kind of, steer around that every now and then and see if I can make life as hard as possible for myself by filming, real world stuff that has mass and actually exists. And I'm really happy with the look of it. I think other people are too.
Absolutely. One of the things I enjoy about following your career is you are a versatile director. You tackled horror, you tackled space, you tackled science fiction, you tackled action. Is there a genre sometime in your career down the road you would love to tackle in the near future?
Ooh, well, I know it's not been released or talked about anywhere, but I know we've got projects slated out through about 2024.
Mm.
And one of them is a martial arts action film, and
Oh,
one of
wow.
them is another horror film, which I'm very much excited about. And those are the projects on my table after Oath and Farragut Forward through about 2024. Maybe I'll try comedy one day because it's really, something that it's something I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a particularly funny guy, but maybe I could film a comedy and surprise myself if you get the right comedic actors in there. But it's something I've never seen a good comedy script that I would just, that spoke to me that I would love to get in there and direct. So maybe it's out there. Maybe that's the challenge. Find that one.
You're right. You never know. I mean, you directed such wonderful films so far. Why not go for comedy one day?
Be a nice change.
Right. Last question. What advice would you give to any future filmmaker listening, reading, watching? What advice would you give?
Easy peasy. The advice is stop making excuses to yourself. So what do I mean by that? I made all the same excuses. I made them for decades, probably. I didn't make Killer of Grassy Ridge until I was 39 years old. Mm-hmm. And I had thought about maybe making a movie probably since I was in my young 20s. So I put that off for almost 20 years because my equipment wasn't good enough. I didn't know the right people. Mm-hmm. I didn't know the craft because I didn't go to film school. Right. I kind of set up all these criteria for myself that one day I woke up and just realized that none of that matters, especially now. Folks have more powerful cameras in their pocket right now on their cell phone than Hollywood ever had, 30 years ago. There's really no more excuses. You can learn anything you need to learn on YouTube, anything. Watch YouTube. You don't need to go to film school. So film school is obviously helpful, but it's not a requirement. You don't need to go to film school to make a movie, to make a short film. Learn the craft on YouTube. Whatever camera you have in your possession right now, whether if you're young and you can steal your parents' camera or borrow it or ask permission for it, use it. Learn how to use it. It doesn't have to be top of the line. Learn it. If you don't have that, you probably have a cell phone with a decent camera on it. And the advice that I read when I first got started was shoot every weekend. If you have weekends off, go out and shoot something every weekend. And shoot something simple. Shoot two people talking. Shoot two people talking in a room and just put a little bit of thought into, where you might want to position them, how the sun's coming into the room. Don't get bogged down with equipment and lights and all this stuff you need. Just shoot a simple scene with two people talking in a room, maybe beside a window. And then that's also going to you're going to end up with footage. Some of it will be terrible, but that's okay. That's the point. Yeah. But then you're going to have material that you can practice editing with and actually cut together a conversation. So my advice is to, number one, just stop making excuses because everyone makes excuses to themselves. And it's amazing what happens when we stop doing that and actually just go do something. So just don't make excuses and just shoot something every weekend. Shoot something on your lunch break at work.
If you don't get caught, of course.
It's your lunch break. You can shoot yourself eating. Nobody will have a problem with that.
You're right. Where can people find your work, your material outside of YouTube? Where can people find you if they want to get more information about you?
The best place to get me is actually Twitter. I'm at that Johnny K guy on Twitter. You can get me on Instagram too, but I don't use IG very much personally. We use it for the studio a lot to get promotional stuff out, but I don't use personally IG a lot. But yeah, Twitter is the best place to get me. And in terms of projects, Chaotica Studios on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and also chaoticastudios.com.
Excellent. Well, Johnny, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I'm looking forward to, my goodness, Radical 1, We're looking forward to The Oath. We're looking forward to the Farragut and your future film projects down the road. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you, man. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me too.